Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is
amazing.
Thousands of copies have been sold across the United States and the world. You can pick up your copy today on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you here on another episode of EdUp as we fast and furiously approach 700 episodes. I never thought I'd actually say something like that out loud. We just passed, if you didn't know, and you don't follow me on social media, or Elvin, which would be just outlandish if you didn't follow us, because everybody does right now. We just passed 300,000 downloads of this podcast to the higher education and adjacent communities. 300,000 listens on our podcast. You have honored us with your ears and with your attention as we continue to bring on really, I gotta say, and this might be selfish a little bit, but I don't think there is a podcast out there that has brought as many incredible, amazing leaders to the microphone at scale like we've been able to do. There are so many amazing stories to tell in higher ed, and you just can't tell them all. And the ones that you do hear, in my opinion, are the same ones. This big university or that big university, it's really easy to focus on that. But what about other universities? What about getting them to the microphone when they don't get as much of a chance sometimes? Well, that's what we do here at EdUp, is we create a microphone for everyone to tell their story. But before I bring on my guest today, I want to bring back first-time guest co-host, but let me think about how to do this. He was a guest. Now he's a guest co-host, and he was one of the 125 presidents featured in commencement. How do you like that for synergy? Ladies and gentlemen, he's Dr. Carlos Campo, and he is president of Ashland University. Carlos, how are you?
Hey, Joe. I'm doing great. Thanks for the intro and for the applause. That was awesome.
Well, if anyone could see you now, Carlos, you are dressed to the nine right now, my friend. You look outstanding.
Yeah, I've got the perfect look for a podcast thing.
If you could see him, ladies and gents, he's looking very good. This is sometimes people dress up for the podcast, right? That's the only reason he dressed up today. That's what he told me earlier. But let's bring in our guest because we have a lot to talk about. I'm going to bring him in now. I think I rescheduled on him once. And then I was like, Wayne, come back. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wayne D. Lewis Jr. He's president of Houghton University. Wayne, how are you?
I'm great, Joe. Thanks for the invitation.
We are so honored to have you here. You know, we always level set for the audience. Somebody comes on and goes, Houghton University, I haven't heard of that before. So tell us about Houghton University. What do you do and how do you do it?
Great. So Houghton University, founded in 1883. We are in Western New York, about an hour and 15 minutes from both Buffalo and Rochester, New York. We were founded by the Wesleyan Methodist Church, and specifically founded to make sure young people in this part of the state had access to a high quality Christian education. Proudly, we have continued with that mission even to today. We pride ourselves on seamlessly integrating an experience where kids have a great learning experience, where they're nurtured, whole person, academically, spiritually, emotionally, and where they leave and they're well prepared to have lives, not just careers, but lives, whole lives, where they're going to live as professionals, as leaders, as servants, as family members, as community members, as church members.
You know, so the first question I have, by the way, that's amazing, particularly the way that you say it. And if you take some of the things that you said, the whole person, spiritually, you know, all of the things that you said, and you put that in the narrative of today, sometimes you get this complete opposite of it's AI, it's technology, it's anti-higher ed. You don't need to educate the whole person. You just need some skills to go out there. And there's this very divergent messaging that can hit students. And I find it I've been in higher ed over 20 years, worked at all levels. I find it hard to navigate through that. Can you imagine what a student is going through to figure out how do you couch that in what you offer versus what's being said, and how do you kind of bring some synergy around that?
One of the most transformational professional experiences for me happened in my time in government. I spent 4 years in state government in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And one of the greatest blessings was spending time outside for 2 years, outside of education and in workforce development. And it allowed me to uncover and better understand connections between education, traditional education, and workforce development that I don't think we often make. One of the things that's unmistakable, you talked about AI, you talk about machine learning, robots, software. We have come to the place, and we're going to continue to be at a place in the workforce where if a robot, software, AI can do the job quicker, faster, cheaper, easier, more consistent, then you're not likely to have human beings to continue to do those jobs for very long. Which means for me as an educator, that it is even more important than it ever has been to prepare human beings, people, to do things, to lead, to serve in ways that robots and software and AI are not able to do.
Nailed it.
Right? Because if a calculator or software can do it, companies are not likely to continue to hire human beings. But there are things that we as people have the ability to do, think creatively, problem solve, make connections that aren't clearly evident. Those are the types of spaces that I think increasingly we have to prepare our young people and our not so young people to go into the workforce and to live productive lives.
I love that. Carlos, I want to pass it over to you because I know you got questions.
Well, thank you. And just before a question, just to thank Wayne for his work. It's one of the seats I've been in for a while. These are tough jobs, Wayne. So thanks for doing it. And you hit on something really important there in terms of AI, but help our listeners understand how Houghton is dealing with this issue, of course, that our faculty in particular are up in arms about, and that is, how do you control the potential of AI, almost taking over writing for students as it continues to become manifest in our classrooms? What strategies are you guys looking at? What are you going to implement to help ensure that students are doing the work and that the work that they're doing is reflective of their continued improvement?
Yeah, I think we're approaching it in a balanced way. I can imagine in previous eras, in previous generations, that there were similar conversations and questions about the use of calculators or the use of personal computers. Yeah. Now, there is no question that machine learning and AI have changed and likely will continue to change society in a way that we could not have imagined previously. But it's not going away. And so the immediate concerns, I think, are real concerns, right? How do we make sure we're teaching and assessing students in such a way that students can't easily just feed questions or exams into a chat bot and then get responses that they can upload? Those are real concerns, real pedagogical concerns that we have to think through. The bigger picture questions, I think, are probably even more important for us to think through, which is our teaching in this era and in this generation, is it still appropriate? Is it still relevant in a space and in a reality where there is AI, where there is machine learning? And we're approaching both. So on the kind of nuts and bolts stuff, there's everything from software. Software companies are keeping up, whereas the same way they were able to identify for many years now an assignment that was likely plagiarized for somewhere. They're now also able to identify whether or not it looks like something was generated through AI. But I also hear from our faculty in writing in particular, the importance of understanding your students' voice in their work, understanding who your students are, being able to spot whether or not an assignment or a piece sounds like your student, like it likely came from your student. And I also heard a really innovative approach from one of our faculty members just a couple months ago, where she was sharing that she will feed her exams to AI, to a bot, to get responses back so that she can better familiarize herself with what an AI generated response looks like.
Yeah, it's good. I actually received an email from an alumnus today, and I'm absolutely certain that at least a framework for it. I mean, it's funny. It's starting to have these markers, right? That we're able to pick it up. So
right.
that's great. I really like the way you frame that. And I think you're right. And Joe, I know you're on this all the time and you're hearing it from lots of other presidents, but the reality is I like the way you're getting out ahead of this. And one of the things we're thinking about is really to try to maybe even have an AI czar of sorts on our campus that can help us navigate through this too. Someone who's living in it, may not be an academic at all, right? But can really help us understand some of the things we might be contending with. Well, maybe I'll just continue rolling if Joe's okay with it, to ask another follow-up, only because I want to congratulate you on terrific results for the fall. Looks like you made an announcement about enrollment being up, and that's bucking a trend. You know, you'd even mentioned earlier how you've been fighting, trying to cast off some stuff that's not needed. We're all fighting lower enrollments. We saw Gallup's recent survey, a 21% decline since 2015 in confidence levels, particularly among conservatives. Those are your kids, those are our kids, right? So 21% decline in 8 years, Wayne. So you're bucking the trend this fall, but you're looking out 5 years. How does Houghton, Western New York, I know exactly where you guys are. I don't have to tell you one thing about your state, tremendously competitive. Pennsylvania, right on your border there. How do you look out 5 years and ensure that this isn't a blip on the screen, but you continue that enrollment growth in the future?
I think things look good, quite honestly. I think there's no question that our market is a really competitive one. I'm just starting my third year here at Houghton, about a month into my third year. And I would say early on, spent a lot of time with our leaders, learning and getting to know not just the university and our alumni and our students, but our region. The primary geographic space where we recruit students, where we have served students over many generations. The vast majority of our students, while we serve students from all over the country and even internationally, the vast majority of our students historically have come from New York State, from Pennsylvania, Central Canada, a little bit of New Jersey, a little bit of Massachusetts. We're talking about a radius of about 4.5 to 5 hours. And if anything, I think the COVID-19 pandemic has shrunk that a little bit more. I think kids more so now than pre-COVID are interested in staying in that radius. Most students, always exceptions, but most students tend to want to be able to drive within that. So we've redoubled our efforts in that region. In fact, our team will hear me say pretty regularly, I want us to own our region. I don't want young people who fit our target market, our target demographic, to have never heard of Houghton. It's one thing if they decide Houghton's not a great fit for them. But it's another thing if we've not done the legwork and made the investments that are necessary to make sure that they've heard of us, that they know who we are, and that we know that we're a viable option. The other part that goes along with that is as we've worked hard to understand our region and we've refined our messaging, making sure parents and families understand exactly who we are in the market, I am more confident today than I was 2 years ago that there are more than enough families and prospective students in our region who are looking for exactly what Houghton is and exactly what Houghton provides. We're getting ready to welcome our largest incoming class in 6 years this fall, but I'm at least as excited about fall 2024 in that we had more junior visits this year for students who are going to be high school seniors next year than we've ever had before. So we're moving,
We
we're
love that.
moving, we're moving aggressively into, with younger and younger students and reaching those prospective families. And we are not afraid of being absolutely clear about who we are, what we provide, and who we're not. And I think
Yes, sir.
that's only fair. It's fair to be very clear with families and prospective students so that they can make good decisions about whether or not you're the right fit for them.
Wayne, talk about, you're talking about messaging and marketing. By the way, the crystallization of the brand, when you talk about here's who we are, here's how we're going to serve you, that is exactly what higher ed needs, because, you hear, though, you can't be all things to all people. Well, that's true, but you have to tell people what you are to make them understand, or else you have to give them an opportunity to choose you or choose something else. And it's very hard to choose things if you don't fully understand them. So I really like what you're saying. How do you get the message out in terms of marketing and messaging? Because if you want to kind of own your backyard, by the way, that radius you're talking about is one of the most competitive radiuses in the country, maybe in the world, in terms of the number of institutions around that radius. I'm from Syracuse originally, and most people that have listened to the podcast know that. So I am very familiar. I went to school. I went to a SUNY school. So I remember the hundreds of universities I could choose from within a 50-mile, 100-mile radius. It was unbelievable. And you know where to start. I looked at a female to male ratio. I mean, talk about really whittling down your choices here and what major I wanted to do. But you get down to how you choose today. How do you get in front of people? Because you have to have money or you have to have grassroots efforts. How's that happening?
It's both and, right? It's making the investments that are necessary for media, social media. There's still some snail mail, right? We're still mailing as well. We're sending recruiting admissions counselors out to recruiting events. We have them at the recruiting fairs. They're visiting high schools. So all the traditional things and all the things that we would see every other higher education institution in the country doing. But the second part of what you said, I think, is at least as important for us, and that is the grassroots piece. And understanding that for an institution like us, in particular, a small price-centered liberal arts institution, that having relationships with families, with prospective students, with schools, with churches, with community leaders is at least as important for us. Because there's only so much, when we think about our specific population of students, the students we're going after, there's only so much they're gonna see in an ad or online. Once you get past that initial kind of name and brand recognition, the questions that people have, the assurances they wanna have, those are things that have to come through the channels of trusting relationships. And it takes time to build trusting relationships. And it often requires in-person interaction, personal relationships that are long-standing. And so we're investing in both. We're obviously making the strategic investments. You're going to see Houghton in an airport. You're going to see Houghton on a bus shelter. You're going to see Houghton on your screen. But we're also going to know principals and superintendents and pastors and district religious leaders. We're going to know those people so that as they're seeing or hearing from families and prospective students, I'm looking for an institution that takes very seriously academic excellence and a Christian environment, that Houghton should be top of mind. Have you ever heard of Houghton? Let me introduce you to someone.
You have that, and I'll pass it to you, Carlos. I just one more quick question for Wayne. You're saying it so eloquently, and I always talk about it's the kitchen table, the picnic table, and you're in the back, your backyard, and there's a family friend over who's about to send somebody off to college, and somebody goes, "Hey, you have heard of Houghton, right? You're going to look local." I mean, that's when when you get that referral. Those referral populations, that your messaging is really working, to your point. And that's really the great place to get to. But I want to ask you just kind of a sidebar question, because you're if you look back 3 years, you've been a president for 3 years. Your anniversary is almost at the beginning of COVID. So you're like this, your entire presidency was a COVID presidency. And so now you're coming out to some level of what was reality, I guess, before COVID. What have you learned? The one or two things, give us the nuggets, the golden nuggets. There's aspiring presidents out there. There's aspiring leaders up there that want to move up. What can you tell them about your time as a college president that you think somebody would need to know?
For me, I would say it is so much more than just a job. And so if anyone is thinking about the presidency as kind of the next step in your career, or another leadership job or opportunity, don't do it. Because it's not that. It is, personally for me, the Christian college presidency is a calling. And it's important to make sure that it doesn't become this, but it can be all consuming. And so it is really important, I think, to set boundaries and prioritize family life and family time. But different than most positions, when an institution or a board of trustees in particular hires you to be the president, they are not hiring you to be the president between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. They are hiring you to be the president every day. And it is so much more than just what you do in your office or the tasks you complete. You are expected to be the walking embodiment of the mission of your institution. That's a very tall order. And so the first thing I would say to anybody thinking about the presidency is make sure that's really what you're interested in this season of your life, because that's what it will be.
Oh, yeah.
Join the movement to mobilize and revolutionize higher education by picking up your copy of Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education today. This book has been featured in Forbes, NPR, Harvard Business Review, CEO World Magazine, NBC News, CBS News, and Business Insider, among many others. Don't miss out on what today's highest college leaders have to say about the future of higher education. Pick up your copy on Amazon.
That's a great response, Wayne. Thank you for that. I heard someone say that presidents are living logos of their institution, but the idea that you can never turn it off. You can always say, I'm not speaking on behalf of, or I'm not in that role at this moment, but you're always wearing it. So that's really good. Lots of questions to ask, but talk to us a little bit about innovation on your campus. One, maybe give our listeners one or two programs you're excited about that are coming online athletically or academically. And then two, what's your R&D unit on campus that's helping you stay fresh and look at what's next?
Yeah. I'll start with second question first. I think they're so related. Our R&D unit is the faculty, right? The faculty, in terms of thinking about what are the next programs, what are the next specializations, what are the areas where we need to continue to build, and then how do we try those things out to see if those are the right things for Houghton? That's the faculty. 100%.
That's a fact.
And so for Houghton, as we've thought about, where we go next and what we do, it's not right now, and it's not likely to be in the near future, brand new things that are completely disconnected from what we do now. Instead, our approach is much more around innovation within and very tightly adjacent to the things we do exceptionally well. So for example, we have been for generations incredibly strong in the STEM areas. So biology, chemistry, biochemistry, physics, One of the things that I think is a hallmark of what we do in the sciences and mathematics is if you come to Houghton as an undergraduate student, you will have the opportunity to participate in research experience. It's not something that's reserved just for, you know, the very top performing students. Every undergraduate student that comes to Houghton and studies in the sciences will have that research opportunity. And so we've, in biology, for example, we've developed some niche areas, some specializations in neuroscience, in exercise science, in environmental science that are aligned with and a part of what we've done historically well in biology. It's not anything that's brand new, that's totally out of, you know, left field for Houghton, but it gives us the space to just continue to build on areas of strength. I'm a big proponent on building on areas of strength and spending more time thinking about and building around our strengths than crying about areas of weakness.
Don't cry about your areas of weakness. Building from strength, I like what you're saying, Wayne, because isn't it too often in higher ed that we have mission creep or because we need more enrollment? So we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, or we're going to do something that we hadn't done before. How do you keep everybody focused on that? You know, because you're talking about multiple stakeholders, you're talking about faculty, you're talking about staff, you're talking about, you know, people from the public. How do you leverage from strength continuously without fraying at the edges, you know?
Yeah, I think mission creep is a threat to everyone in every organization, and making sure you stay tightly in alignment with your mission, that everybody's rowing in the same direction, I think is one of the unique roles that the president has and the unique responsibilities that the president has. I try my best to not have my fingers in the nuts and bolts of what's happening on the campus on a day-to-day basis, but I do see as one of my primary responsibilities, making sure that our leaders and teams are aligned with our mission and our vision and are all rowing in that direction. Now, at the end of the day, that means sometimes the president, always in consultation whenever possible with as many stakeholder groups as possible, but every once in a while, the president has to make some really difficult decisions. Sometimes those decisions or those responses are yes, but more often than not, those difficult decisions are no. No to potential opportunities, no to potential avenues that may on the surface look like they're great opportunities, but are not in alignment with our mission and don't further us in terms of achieving the vision that we've decided collectively we're working toward. I think that's a really important job for the president, and it doesn't always get you applause. It doesn't always make everyone happy, but again, that's a part of what people expect us to do.
I thought that that presidents made everybody happy every day. That's what I thought.
Yikes!
That's I'm sure that's what Carlos does.
Oh yeah.
Well, you've never seen that guy in action, and that's what he does every day.
Oh boy. I wish.
Carlos, do you have any? You can jump in if you have another question, but I've got another one too. Unless you want to.
Sure, go ahead. I'll follow up with you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So you know we're in a time where, and going back to my earlier question, kind of building on it, you're seeing the institutions close, or at least some of the institutions that are closing have some type of religious affiliation to them. There have been many that have been Christ-centered or Catholic or whatever that are closing. And what the public will say is, well, there's just not as many students interested in that focused education, or it's not as valuable, and you're growing. So, you know, what's the difference? What's the difference between the institution that is Christ-centered that's in trouble and Houghton University? And how does somebody who might be in trouble but still have time to turn things around fill that gap?
You know, there's so many factors, and you know, it's so unfortunate. I think we're in a place where, you know, some of our sister institutions are facing really tough times, and even faced with the possibility or ultimately having to make the decision to close. And the reasons why an institution would come to that place are so complicated. They're so multifaceted. They often are financial related. You know, they can, and it can be everything from, you know, just the failure to generate enough revenue to cover expenses, the failure to cut expenses sufficiently for you to maintain ratios and continue to move forward in a positive direction. Or it could include taking on more debt than an institution is able to handle. You know, maybe there was a vision and the belief that taking on a certain degree of debt would lead to growth, would lead to opportunities that didn't materialize. And so it's left you with this debt that you're not able to handle. All those things I think I've seen over the last year or two have factored into some of those tough spots. The messaging piece and the identity piece of a faith-based institution, though, I think is an incredibly important piece. And this is to where your question is. As I talk to our current students and families and prospective students and families, and to some extent our alumni, when these families are looking for an institution that is a Christian institution in this market, what I'm finding is they're interested in an institution that takes that identity very seriously. And they're not interested in an institution that waffles in that identity. They're not interested in an institution that says we're a Christian institution, but truly we want to be all things to all people. Our actions say we want to be all things to all people. What I find is parents and prospective students in that space will sometimes say, I'd rather spend the dollars and send my kid to a state institution or a secular institution that makes no claims at all about religious identity than spend the money and the resources to send them to a religious institution that waffles in their convictions.
That's powerful.
I don't find that and you know, our target market is Christian families. All of our students are not Christians, but our target market is Christian families. I don't find in that population that they're interested in a waffling or an unsure Christian institution. They want you to be who you said you're going to be and to not mince words about it. That
could also be really, really good point number 2 on the advice to give presidents, right? Know your institution. Double down on the identity of that institution rather than
whatever
than waffle. So knowing.
Right. Whatever that identity or whatever your mission is, be absolutely serious about it. Be committed to it. I lean very heavily into the identity and the mission of our institution.
Yes, clarity is kindness. I heard someone say once, and it really is true for any prospective student or family. Clarity is kindness, and you don't want any student to say 6 months into it, this is not the place that I thought it was. Right? Right. So it's really good stuff. Well, let me pivot just a little, because you hinted at something in terms of not being involved in the day-to-day. I read a recent article. It's actually some faculty member kind of bemoaning the shift in the presidency. She said, there was a day when the president was expected to be an academic. We go way back, of course, the founding of our institutions. The president was the only faculty member, right? When the earliest days of higher education. But now today, she went on to say, if you just have a nice tie, President Company, nice tie and a decent smile, you qualify. The presidency is turned into this, fundraising machine, and they're basically a salesperson, out in front of an institution. Help us understand your pie chart. So here's your life as balanced as it can be. I really appreciated the comments you talked about earlier, the immersive experience it is to be a president. It's not a job. It is clearly a calling. But help us understand. You've got this work to do. How do you see your pie chart? Are you spending 50% of your time fundraising? Is it 20? Is it external affairs? How much are you on the road, on campus? Our listeners may not have a sense of that. We'd like to know what's going on with you, Wayne. So give us a sense.
No, I think it's a great question, and I agree. You know, not so much with the all you need is a nice tie and a great smile to be to be president.
Good.
I'll say I think having a nice tie and a smile probably do help. But when I think about my time currently, you know, it gets difficult to separate what is advancement, fundraising, marketing, external relations. But if I were to put all of that in one bucket, that in one big bucket, I would say together it's at least 50%, probably closer to 60%. Of my time in my life. I think I spend probably about 35% of my month in travel, away from campus. A big portion of that is, you know, meeting with friends of the university, donors, alumni. But for me as well, a big portion of it is relationship building with pastors, local congregations, Christian schools. I get out to speak at Christian schools pretty regularly, doing chapel, on the weekends at churches, speaking at churches, spending time with denominational and non-denominational partners. So a good portion of it is outside of the campus. And, you know, what makes that possible for us, I believe, as presidents is having an executive cabinet, executive leadership team that's outstanding, right? When you have executive leaders on campus who you have recruited, who you are supporting, who you are empowering to lead, that's the only thing that enables us to be away from campus and do the critical work of fundraising and fundraising that presidents have to do in this era.
Agreed. Well, very interesting. I know that many of us think often about finding this balance, and I agree completely about having a great team. What about your board? You know, that leadership is so important. Give our listeners a sense of how big is your board? What's the Wesleyan connection of your board members? What is the requirement there? What sort of term limits? Give us just a sense of the governance structure and those kinds of things as well.
Great. So we are a denominational university. So we are one of 5 universities of the Wesleyan Church. I'm always careful to say we are not affiliated with the Wesleyan Church. Technically, we are a ministry of the Wesleyan Church. So our board members, every board member must be approved and officially elected by the general board of the Wesleyan Church. The church discipline requires that at least 2/3 of our boards of trustees are active members of a local Wesleyan congregation. We're expected to have a pretty even split between clergy and lay members on our boards of directors. My board is approximately 32 members. Most of the work of the board happens through committees. And so we have standing committees like academic affairs, student life, advancement. But we also have secondary committees whose work is more targeted, like an investment committee that monitors and makes changes periodically to our investment strategy, particularly with our endowment dollars, an audit committee that provides oversight for annual audit of the institution. Our board meets together as a whole board 3 times a year, but most of the work is happening through our committees of the board and through an executive committee of the board, which is the chairs of the committees and the board officers, which meets about every 6 weeks.
Great. And term limits? What about term limits?
No term limits at Houghton, actually. Okay. No term limits. And so my board is comprised of board members who've been serving from 2 years to board members who've been serving for 35.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Well, I think about, what's next for all of us. I'm grateful that I've gotten to meet you in this fashion. Just maybe to wrap things up, a couple of things. And one is that I want to just offer you personally that this door has been open between us. We're brothers in the Lord. And if there are ways that I can help support your work at Houghton or you personally, just jump on the phone and say, Carlos, you have no stake in Houghton except to help me succeed. Can you, think this through with me? And then, that kind of thing. I'd be happy to work through just something you're working on confidentially, something along those lines. Just grateful to have met you and have had this time to share a few thoughts with you, and God bless you in your continued work. Hope you're very successful. I know it's all kingdom stuff, so it's great.
Well, God bless you. And I look forward to lots more conversations to come.
All right, Wayne, thank you so much for all the insights. We always like to ask our guests 2 final questions. And I'm going to hit you with the first one right now. And that is, what else do you want to say about your university? What else is going on? Any announcements you need to make or want to make? Take the mic, give us 2 minutes. What do you want to say?
One thing I think it's important for people to understand about Houghton is that Houghton as an institution has done an exceptionally good job of integrating our faith commitments and academic excellence. I think sometimes the thinking around faith-based institutions can be that the emphasis is on our faith. In our case, the emphasis is on Christianity. And in doing that, we sacrifice academic rigor or commitment to academic excellence. And that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, one of the hallmarks of Houghton historically has been this seamless integration of academic excellence and a commitment to our Christian faith.
Thanks for that, Wayne. And of course, the final question is a little bit harder, but we have to ask every single guest, and what you say matters. All right, Wayne, here we go. What do you see for the future of higher education?
In terms of the future of higher education, even as the industry changes, I believe the future is bright. But here's the condition. I think the industry and institutions are going to have to be willing to adapt. And we're going to have to be willing to adapt at a pace that higher education is not accustomed to adapting to. The world is changing quickly. There continues to be the need for people to learn, to acquire new skills, to better understand their context, to learn how to work with one another. There's always going to be a need for people to be more formed, fully formed human beings who are capable of interacting with each other in positive ways, loving and respecting each other. And to that end, I think higher education will continue to have a prominent role in society. But institutions that are unwilling to change, that are unwilling to adapt to both the economic changes and conditions in our communities and society, and to the broader ways that we as human beings, we as Americans interact with each other, and the ways that we want to learn, I think institutions are going to have trouble. And so I don't think higher education institutions are going anywhere, but I do think the ones who are willing and able to adapt at a rapid pace are in a much better position to be successful than those who are resistant or unwilling to adapt.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's been a great episode today. What an honor, first of all, with my guest co-host. I got to outro him first. It's been a long time, but he finally came back to an EdUp microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Dr. Carlos Campo. He's president at Ashland University. And our guest of honor, your guest of honor, here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wayne Lewis Jr., president at Houghton University. Wayne, we hope you had a great time here on the EdUp Experience podcast. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Attention.
Forbes called commencement the beginning of a new era in higher education, a dispensable touch point for what's being said in, about, and around higher education now. Don't miss the insights from 125 college and university presidents about what the future of higher education holds. Pick up your copy of Commencement on Amazon today.